Box office top 10. First of all, the streamers. The Automat, first of all.
I loved The Automat. I think it's really wonderful. And if you get a chance, listen to the Mel Brooks song, There Was Nothing Like the Coffee at the Automat, which is now on Spotify, and also you can hear it on Scala Radio on my Fabulous Music Show.
Anne-Marie says, an Automat features in the 1962 film That Touch of Mink with Doris Gray and Cary Grant. In one scene, when an unsuspecting Gig Young opens the little door, instead of lemon meringue pie, an arm comes out and bonks him in the face. Case of mistaken identity, I fear, and not as a sweet. Dear Top and Bottom, Alex in Fleet in Hampshire just finished watching season 2 of Loki and noticed that the lunch area at the TVA, the main setting for the story, is called the Automat. Oh. And the food, key lime pie, is dispensed from little windowed boxes, as described by the good doctor. Also, this type of restaurant still exists in the Netherlands and is called Febo.
No.
Albeit significantly less fancy. Febo. Huh. Anyway, down with counter-protesters and hate marchers. Can I just say, I know why everyone called them counter-protesters because that's what the Met called them, but actually what they were was the far right. And
fascists.
And they weren't calling them counter-protesters seemed a little bit
fascists.
Mealy-mouthed. Yeah. Dear Dorothy and Lorelei, says Hannah Wildman. Listening to one of the reviews this week, I realised that I had never actually understood the following lyric from Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend in one of my favourite movies, Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. Mm-hmm. A kiss may be grand, but it won't pay the rental on your humble flat or help you
at the Automat.
And now I know, can't wait to watch the documentary, and I'm sure I will also want to go to the Automat. I'm not sure that Hannah is responsible for all of that. But anyway, she says, second-time emailer, I was thrilled to hear you share my Christmas movie memory of watching It's a Wonderful Life back in the day on the historic Walter Door Cinema screen at Liverpool's Philharmonic Hall, apparently one of the last of these screens which rise up from the stage.
Yeah, amazing.
Thanks for all the wonderful reviews, the interviews and the witterings, because that's what we do.
Excellent.
And Hannah is now living in Virginia. Hannah, thank you very much indeed. So into the 10, at 10, The Exorcist Believer. Thank you very much.
On the way out.
Number 9 in the UK, The Great Escaper.
I found it very, very charming. And as I said, Glenda Jackson reminded me of my mum, which just fits into another thing we were talking about in the car on the way here, which is that movies give to you what you bring to them.
UK's number 8, number 3 in the States, Taylor Swift, The Eras Tour.
We are officially Swifties, apparently.
We are, definitely. UK number 7, number 10 in America is Paw Patrol, the Mighty Movie.
Or, as the misheard title was by a listener, Paw Patrol.
The Paw Patrols.
The Paw Patrols. They're trolls, but they don't have any money.
It's a whole new movie. Lee Monks in Manchester on the movie that's at number 6 here. Dream Scenario. Dream Scenario features yet another wonderfully tortured turn from Nicolas Cage, not Cave, whose latest creation, a nebbish professor, deserves recognition as one of his finest portrayals alongside those delivered in Bad Lieutenant, Leaving Las Vegas, Adaptation and Pig. The film itself would seem to represent an Alexander Payne-esque riposte not only to the worst ever overindulgences of cancel culture, but also to the appalling narcissism the likes of Harvey Weinstein and Alex Jones, amongst far too many others, are routinely guilty of exhibiting whenever they're offered the chance to offer even a hint of contrition for their myriad instances of bad behaviour. The very best scene in the film involves Cage's character turning a watershed opportunity to atone into a shamefully delirious and ostentatious exercise in self-exculpation, a moment that would surely have offered a much better and impactful means of concluding an admirably pithy condemnation, it's a very long sentence, of reactionary media and the toll it takes on ordinary people than the current fizzing off into the ether.
Can I respond?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Dave in Ickenham in West London. Nicolas Cage's best film for a while. Not up there with the likes of Pig or Bad Lieutenant for me, but still upper middle tier Cage in a weird, memeable performance, the likes of which Nick excels at. I'd like to think I'm well qualified to make such a judgment, as during lockdown, instead of baking bread or playing with the kids, I decided to watch every single Nicolas Cage film, and I mean every single one. A film on the Ramones where Cage appears in archived news footage delivering a eulogy at Johnny Ramone's funeral, seen it. A 2-hour Roman Polanski documentary where Nick pops up in a 3-second cutaway applauding as Polanski picks up an Oscar, yep. Not sure why I undertook such a task, especially when I had to endure my wife's sighs of exasperation when she walked in on me watching G-Force, the one where Cage plays an evil hamster, where she quite fairly pointed out that I could have at least watched it with the children. But at his best, Nicolas Cage is just so fun to watch, and who else can deliver such gloriously committed performances in the likes of The Rock, Adaptation, Vampires, Kiss, Mandy, Mom and Dad, Raising Arizona, and Wild at Heart, whilst combining with that roles in shed loads of unadulterated straight-to-video tat. A word of warning, don't watch erotic thriller Zanderlee.
Yes.
You.
Weirdly enough, Zanderlee is covered in the good lady Professor Herrin Dawes' book, The Erotic Thriller in Contemporary Cinema, yes. And it doesn't come out of it well.
Number 5 here, number 16 in the States, Anatomy of a Fall.
I love this. This is one of my favourite films of the year. It has an amazing performance by Sandra Hüller. It is... It's a film that has your brain firing on all cylinders all the way through. There is a death at the beginning, and the rest of the film is how did that death happen? And will judge accordingly find that Sandra Hüller's character was responsible or not, and it's all about what our own preconceptions are and what we bring to the table. It's just wonderful. It won the Palme d'Or, deservedly so. It's magnificent.
Samuel Salzer, applied behavioural scientist in Stockholm. I recently had the pleasure of watching Anatomy of a Fall at the charming Victoria Cinema in Stockholm. While I share Mark's high praise for the film, there was a particular element that I found distracting and concerning.
Right.
As a behavioural scientist, I am acutely aware of the fallibility of human memory, especially in the context of recounting events. The film's significant reliance on a child's testimony as a key plot point seemed deeply problematic to me. Research in my field consistently highlights the unreliability of testimony. Contrary to popular belief, memory is not a static recording played over and over. It's more like a tape that's constantly being re-recorded over. With each act of remembrance, we effectively create a new version of the event. It's a phenomenon that our better halves can often help us painfully realise what we thought happened wasn't quite so. This aspect of the film, coupled with my very limited knowledge of the Swiss judicial system, led me to broader contemplation. Is this still a thing? Does such reliance on child testimony reflect reality in current legal practices? Or was it merely an effective plot device for the film? I'd be interested to know if you or any other listeners had similar questions and concerns whilst watching the film.
Can I answer not in terms of Swiss legality, about which I don't know anything, but in terms of the film? The unreliability of the child's testimony is one of the key points. The child believes that they heard low voices, not raised voices, from outside the house. The child absolutely remembers that. And then, when asked to walk through the actions of the day, the child discovers everyone discovers that it's not possible. And the child then has to accept that their memory of what happened isn't right. And they then create a new memory in which what they actually heard was voices from inside the house. And it's a key plot point in the film that memory is unreliable. In fact, there is also a question about there is a recording that becomes dramatized at one point. And the question is, are we seeing what happened, or are we seeing an imagined version of a voice recording? So I think the film does address those things, and I don't have the same concerns about the film.
Interesting line from Samuel when he says, with each act of remembrance, we effectively create a new version of the event. Isn't
that is right, but I believe that the film does address that.
Number 4 here, number 2 in the States, Five Nights at Freddy's.
Has done much better than I expected. Clearly I was wrong about it.
Number 3 here, Killers of the Flower Moon.
Again, an astonishing turnout for a film which has the running time that it does, and which therefore that's relevant because it means that it limits the amount of screenings that you can get in any one evening. So it's really done well.
And Trolls Band Together is at number 2.
And it's exactly what it says on the tin.
Now, the US and the UK number 1 is The Marvels. And as Mark has suggested, we didn't get to it last week because...
They did the preview screening on Wednesday morning, which is when we record the podcast. So it was literally physically impossible to see it. So I paid to go and see it. So 33rd film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Yes, really. Sequel to Captain Marvel. Also a continuation of the TV series Ms. Marvel, which I haven't seen, and that may be crucially important. Co-written and directed by Nia DaCosta, who did a great job of the Candyman reboot in 2021. It has opened at number 1. And in the US, at least, it's the best achieved opening figure for a black female director's film. But it is also the lowest opening weekend total ever for an MCU film. So good and bad. Now, there's been a lot of stuff on the internet about, the film's flopped, it's done this, that, and the other. Stephen King, who we refer to every week on this show, took to social media to say the following. I don't go to MCU movies, I don't care for them, but I find this barely masked gloating over the low box office for the Marvels very unpleasant. Why gloat over failure? To which he subsequently added, some of the rejection of the Marvels may be adolescent fanboy hate. Yuck, girls. Okay? So,
good for him. Thanks very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as we enjoyed making it. While you're here, check out all the other videos because they're cool too, aren't they?
Yeah, and if you want to keep up to date with everything Kermode and Mayo's Take, then check out our social channels.
I mean, why wouldn't you?
I mean, I would. I have done.
Excellent.